Assalamualaikum. We are from Group 2. We'll be presenting about how the Russian invasion of Ukraine had caused the price of oil to increase using market equilibrium diagram. Let's get started.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. I'm BALQIS binti MOHAMAD from JBA2511B and my ID number is 2022698342. I'm going to talk about the introduction of how the Russian invasion of Ukraine had caused the price of oil to increase using market equilibrium diagram. On 24 February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine in the primary escalation of the Russia-Ukrainian war, which started out in 2014. The invasion has led to 10,000 of deaths on each side. About 1 million Ukrainians have been displaced within their country in May, and 7.9 million fled the country by 3 January 2023. Within 5 weeks of the invasions, Russia experienced its best immigration in October Revolution in 1917. The invasion began on the morning of 24 February 2022, when Russian President Putin announced a special military operation of Ukraine. In his address, Putin supported irredentist view, challenged Ukraine's right to statehood, and falsely claimed that Ukraine was governed by neo-Nazis who persecuted the ethnic Russian minority. Russian strike and large ground eruption were launched on the northern front from Belarus, a northeastern frontal toward Kharkiv, a southern front from Crimea, and a southeastern front. Ukrainian chairman has enacted martial law and a general mobilization. The invasion obtained huge worldwide condemnation from governments and intergovernmental organizations, with political reactions such as new sanctions imposed on Russia, which caused huge financial result to the Russian and global economics.
Assalamualaikum. I'm INTAN FARISHA binti ZUOLKIFFLIE from class JBA2511B, student number 2022496494. We'll be explaining about the effects of the Russian invasion of Ukraine to the world. First of all, when Russia invaded Ukraine, it caused food prices to increase. The war between Russia and Ukraine is worsening supply and demand issues, harming consumers' mood and jeopardizing global economic development. Against the backdrop of rising food and energy costs and interrupted supply chains as a result for the coronavirus outbreak. This is because the Ukraine-Russia area is regarded as one of the world's most breadbaskets or major food producers and play an important role not only as an exporter of essential staples such as wheat, but also as one of the world's major suppliers of fertilizers. Secondly, when Russia invaded Ukraine, services and traveling became an issue. Russia and Ukraine are among the top 10 nations in terms of total worldwide departures, and they are an important source of revenue for tourism-dependent countries in Europe, East Asia and the Pacific, the Middle East, North America, and South Asia, and as a favorite tourist location for both, visitors' spending will fall. Thirdly, humanitarian crisis. A lengthy political crisis has arisen in Europe as a result of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. They were forced to look for shelter that could welcome them together, including refugees who need it. The refugees' situation mostly affects the neighboring nations. A quarter of the population of Ukraine would be made up of citizens who become refugees. The vulnerability offered by the Ukraine strikes on densely populated cities will determine the approximate number of deaths. Those who were unable to leave the nation are left with little option but to rely on a severe water drought and shortage of electricity.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURFATIN NAJWA binti Muhammad TARMIZI from JBA2511B and my ID number is 2022AC8584. I would like to talk about Russia was the third largest producer of oil. First of all, oil is one of the world's most important energy resources and it continues to underpin the modern day economics across the world. Almost 40% of the world's oil is consumed by 5 nations. Russia is the world's third oil producer after United States and Saudi Arabia, and ranked as the second largest natural oil gas producer in the world. Oil and natural gas companies are a crucial part of Russia's economy. There are five biggest Russian oil companies, namely Rosneft, Sugorneftegas, Gazprom, Lukoil, and Transneft. Oil is an integral part of Russia's economy according to International Energy Agency. Russia's total oil production was about 11.3 million BD in January 2022. Russia produced an average of 10.83 million barrels of oil per day in December 2015. In 2009, it produced 12% of the world's oil and had a similar share of global oil exports. In June 2006, Russian crude oil and condensate production reached the post-Soviet maximum of 9.7 million barrels per day, exceeding production in 2000 by 3.2 MBBLD as of 2008. The Russian oil industry claims to be in need of huge investments. Strong growth in the Russian economy means that local demand for all types of energy sources like oil, gas, nuclear, coal, hydro, and electricity continues to grow. Russia is a member of OPEC, which is made up of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC members countries produce about 40% of the world's crude oil and represent 60 of the total petroleum traded internationally. OPEC members agree to cut production by 2 million barrels per day from November 2022 until the end of 2023. Thank you.
ZULFAH BINTI ESHAK from JBA2511B with ID number 2022664418, and I shall explaining regarding the effects on the rise of oil price to the economic growth, inflation, and unemployment. First of all, the economic growth is the increasing in output of products and services. The growth in capital goods, the labor force, technology, and human capital are all included in this. It is frequently calculated using estimations like the GDP or gross domestic product in terms of the growth in the total market value of new products and services generated. In this case, the effects of Russia's invasion of Ukraine on the rising of oil price is slowing the economic growth. Related to the article from Now You Know Daily written by the Alex Saskowski on September 21, 2022, that quotes, increasing oil price will also impact the cost of productions for firms, and this will increase their costs and put pressure on the profit margins. While production costs will rise in developed countries, they will have less of an effect on developing countries. To make up for the increasing cost of energy, businesses will need to modify their production methods. Hence, most of the workers will be fired as a method to cut the production costs during inflation period. This will lead in slowing the economic growth. Next is the effects on the rise of oil price to inflations. Price increases or inflations can be thought of as the gradual loss of purchasing power. Regarding the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the rise in oil prices is affecting to the increasing of inflations. According to article from Oil and Gas Investing News, Melissa Pilstills on August 18, 2022 that quotes, historically, higher oil prices have statically correlated with inflations. As prices for oil go up, so do prices for goods that are dependent upon oil. This is due to the price of things that depend on oil also rise when oil prices do. Costs may rise, for instance, for products made of petroleum-based materials like plastic, or for goods like fruits and vegetables that are typically brought to markets by trains and trucks with gasoline or diesel-powered engines. However, there is evidence that the correlation between the price of oil and inflation started to weaken decades ago. History suggests two are associated, but the relationship has deteriorated since the oil price increased in the 1970s. This is claimed by Bob Tassino, which is co-founder of Path Trading Partners.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is AZIZAH binti Idris. Now I'm going to explain about the diagram of market equilibrium. So this is a diagram of market equilibrium. The original market equilibrium is achieved when the curve of supply S0 crosses the curve of demand D at the point of E. The price equilibrium is P0 and quantity equilibrium is Q0. When the invasion of Russia towards Ukraine in the Middle East, market price of oil increases from P0 to P1 and causing quantity of oil supply decreases from Q0 to Q1. The curve of supply S0 shifts to the left. The new market equilibrium is achieved when the curve of supply S1 crosses the curve of demand D at the point of E. The new price equilibrium is P1 and quantity equilibrium is price Q1. Increase because of the reduction of oil supply by Russia. It is because Russia provides majority of the global oil and gas and about third of Europe's energy needs. Besides, most of Russia's gas export through to Europe are piped through Ukraine, so the supply disruption is very plausible. This statement is acknowledged by Muqsid Ashraf, the Senior Managing Director of Central Energy Business. Other than that, David R. Henderson said that the effect of Russia's invasion of Ukraine will lose the global growth, economic growth. Meanwhile, inflation rate increases. It is caused by hard-to-find buyers for the oil even though at discounted price. As the cost of crude oil from producer Russia is high, the cost of petroleum used by consumers also increase, and inflation happens. Government of United States President Joe Biden bans the import of Russian oil, coal, and liquefied natural gas and ban further investment into the country. Next, United States and their allies restrict Russia's access to advanced technology which makes Russia doesn't have weapons stop for the war. European has imposed sanctions against who is responsible for supporting financial aid or action which undermine the independence of Ukraine. For example, Belarus who involved in the invasion and Iran which led the Russians to use their drones which assist Russia. Besides, European also has been almost fully importing crude oil and petroleum products from Russia. This will decrease the demand curve of Russia and causes the profit to be low. That's all from me. Thank you.
Next, I'm going to talk about the conclusion of how the Russian invasion of Ukraine had caused the price of oil to increase using market equilibrium diagram. So, in conclusion, invasion of Russia towards Ukraine in the Middle East has effect on the rise of oil price and slowing the economic growth. In terms of economics, rising oil prices can cause the supply curve for the commodities and services that use oil as an input to move upwards. Thereafter, the rise in oil prices affecting to the increasing of inflation. Inflation and increased oil prices have a significant relationship, hence relating to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, affecting to the increasing of inflation and indirectly rising the unemployment rate.
That's all from us. Thank you.